What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now today we have another free agent that I want to take a look at, kind of look at what they've done recently in the NFL, and kind of look at, whether or not the Detroit Lions should consider bringing him in. This is a guy that some Lions fans have been talking about, kind of a cheaper deal, and I just kind of wanted to go over what he's done recently in the NFL, and talk about whether or not it might be a good idea for Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn to bring this guy in to help bolster the defensive side of the football. And that guy is, of course, Jaball Sheard, the pass rusher from the Indianapolis Colts. Now, before we get into talking about Jaball Sheard, if you are new to the YouTube channel and are enjoying the content, consider liking the videos and subscribing to the YouTube channel. It takes 2 seconds out of your day to make mine, and I would be very, very appreciative to everybody that chooses to do so. But with that being said, let's get into talking about whether or not the Detroit Lions should consider bringing in Jaball Sheard on a 1 or 2 year contract to help bolster this pass rush and this defensive line as a whole. Now, Jaball Sheard is a 31-year-old pass rusher. Last year played with the Indianapolis Colts, but was a former second-round pick as he was selected 37th overall in the 2011 NFL Draft by the Cleveland Browns. However, as I mentioned, he's also played for the Colts and the New England Patriots, so he does have those Patriot ties, which we will talk about in a little bit. Jaball Sheard has never been an All-Pro. He's never been a Pro Bowler, but he has won a Super Bowl, so he has experience playing in playoff games and playing in big games, and he was also a member of the 2011 All-Rookie team. So, he was one of the best rookies out of his respective draft class, or at least had one of the best rookie seasons. Now, Jaball Sheard last year played in 13 games for the Indianapolis Colts, put up 25 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 9 quarterback hits, and 4.5 sacks. So if you look at the base stats, they're pretty solid, right? 4.5 sacks would have been third on the Detroit Lions last year, only behind Devon Kennard and Trey Flowers. So 4.5 sacks, still good. But if you look at his advanced stats, it looks a little bit better. He had 11 quarterback hurries last year, which is solid. 4 quarterback knockdowns, so that's where he hit the quarterback and knocked him over after they got rid of the ball. So he was just like a half a second late on 4 of those, 4 quarterback hits, obviously. And then he had 20 quarterback pressure. So he was still getting pressure on the quarterback. And, just as a reminder, he only played in 13 games, so he did miss 3. Jaball Sheard played in 55% of the defensive snaps for the Colts, which is a solid number by itself, 55 over half the snaps. But, that missing 3 games really affected that number. So, looking at how many snaps he actually played per game for the Indianapolis Colts, he missed the first 3 games of the season, week 1, 2, and 3. However, when he came back in week 4, he played in 48% of the defensive snaps. And then after that, he did not have a game where he played in less than 60 and had several games where he played over 70% of the snaps. So, that 55% might look a little low, but that's because he missed 3 games. Once he was actually there and on the field for the Indianapolis Colts, he was playing in 60 to 70% of the snaps every single game, which is a very large majority and a very solid number to be at for a 31-year-old pass rusher. Now, Jaball Sheard, as I said, kind of had an okay season last year. I wouldn't say he had an elite season. I wouldn't say he was an elite pass rusher last year, but still very solid, getting 4.5 sacks, putting pressure on quarterbacks, and making them uncomfortable in the pocket. Now, what will Jaball Sheard bring to the Detroit Lions? What can he bring to Detroit to help bolster this team, help bolster this defense, and make us a much more cohesive and better unit for the 2020 season? Well, as I mentioned, Jaball Sheard is still a very, very solid pass rusher. 4.5 sacks last year, as I said, it would have been third on the team. He still was getting pressures. He still was getting quarterback knockdowns, still getting quarterback hurries, making the quarterbacks uncomfortable and making them get rid of the ball probably before they would want to. And, he was still getting there and making things uncomfortable for the quarterback, even if the sack numbers don't look even if the sack numbers don't look fantastic. And, one thing I love about Jaball Sheard, and this is something I noticed right off the bat watching just his first game against the Raiders, he's a very smart player. Like, if you try to run screens, if you try to run, stunts, if you try to run end-around, stuff like that, he's going to read that so well. Like, he's a very smart player, and he's a very smart player, and he reads those things very well. He's very good at picking out screens before they happen. He's very good at picking out end-arounds. He's a smart football player, which is good because when we get to the cons, I'll talk about why. But, he's a very smart guy, and I'm not saying that the Detroit Lions have stupid people on their defensive line or anything like that. But, Jaball Sheard just is kind of on another level where, he recognizes stunts. He recognizes screen passes. He recognizes these, shifty and tricky kind of things to try to throw a defensive lineman off. It really doesn't work against him, and he is a very smart player and reads those things very, very well, which is a very valuable thing to add to a NFL defense, because if you don't fall for the tricks, if you don't fall for the stunts, you're going to be much more effective at stopping the things that are actually happening and actually, hurting you on the field. The next thing I want to talk about is he would be a good rotational pass rusher. Like, we have Trey Flowers, we have Deshaun Hand, we have Danny Shelton. We have some pretty solid guys on the defensive line, but the depth isn't great. We have Romeo Okwara as kind of a depth edge rusher, but Jaball Sheard could come in, and I think he could be better than Romeo Okwara. I think he could be really good as kind of a rotational guy. And we know the Detroit Lions like to rotate guys. We know they like to bring in a ton of defensive linemen, and Bob Quinn has said multiple times that you can never have enough pass rushers. So I mean, he could, if we bring him in, he doesn't necessarily have to be the star of the show. He doesn't necessarily have to play in every single snap. We don't need a guy to play in every single snap and get us 10 sacks a season. We need a rotational guy. We need depth at the defensive line position, and Jaball Sheard can definitely bring that. And still he can play a lot, but he doesn't have to play every single snap. He doesn't necessarily have to be the star of the show. And bringing him in to be a depth piece, a rotational guy, can not only take pressure off guys like Trey Flowers and Deshaun Hand, put some of that on him, but also that just keeps everybody a bit fresher. If we can rotate guys around, they don't have to play as much, and they can be fresher on the field, so that when we need them to make a play like 100% at the end of the game, when we need them to go get a sack, they're going to have fresher legs. They're going to be ready to go, at least much more than they would if they were not being rotated and did not have these great backups behind them that can take over and still, produce for the Lions or, whoever they do play for. The one thing that I really like about him, and we kind of talked about this with Mike Daniels, is that he's familiar with the system, but it's in a different way than Mike Daniels. Mike Daniels was here last year, and he knew the Detroit Lions playbook, right? Because he's been here, he practiced with them, he played with them for, the entirety of the season, and he knows the playbook. But Jaball Sheard, as I mentioned earlier, played for the New England Patriots when Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator. I believe he played with the Patriots through 2015 and 2016 and won a Super Bowl with them, and in that time, Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator there. So him and Matt Patricia have, worked together before. They have bonded. They have, seemingly gotten along before. And when Matt Patricia when Jaball Sheard was in a Matt Patricia defense, he did very, very well and had arguably one of his most successful and efficient seasons as a pass rusher in the NFL. So, we could look at that and say, Matt Patricia might want to bring back a guy he's worked with before, who, a guy that has proven he can get sacks, a guy that proven he can get pass rush in a Matt Patricia kind of defense. And, he kind of knows the scheme, he knows the system. He might not know the exact playbook, but he's going to be able to pick things up a lot faster being a former Patriot and playing under a Matt Patricia system, much faster than a guy like Everson Griffin, who's never played under Matt Patricia or a Patriot system where he's had to do that, or a guy like, Jadeveon Clowney that's never ever done something like that before. Jaball Sheard's going to be able to pick it up a lot faster, one, because he's a smart player, as I said, and two, he's played in a similar system to it before, even if it's not exactly the same thing. He's done something similar, so he'll be able to pick it up faster than the average player. Okay, the next thing I want to say is that he is very, he could be a great mentor for some of the younger guys. We have, a decent defensive line, but a lot of our guys are young. Like Austin Bryant's going into his second year, Deshaun Hand is going into his third year. We have some pretty young guys on this roster, and while I think Trey Flowers can be a good mentor, Jaball Sheard's been in the league longer than Trey Flowers, and I think he can teach him some things too, because Jaball Sheard and Trey Flowers are different players. They play different styles, and just getting help from two different places, right? If you get help from Trey Flowers and Jaball Sheard, you get both sides of the coin. You get help with two different things, and that just makes you that much better as a pass rusher, as a player, and as a player for the Detroit Lions going into the future. So I think he could come in and mentor some of the guys and kind of have that veteran leadership that Matt Patricia loves to have from his former Patriots, from like just these veteran guys that have won Super Bowls, have won big games. He can come in and have veteran leadership and mentor some of the younger guys. And then the last pro that I think could really help is he's versatile. And we know Matt Patricia loves versatile guys. We know he loves guys on the defensive line that can move around and shift and do stunts and all kinds of crazy things. But this guy has played linebacker, he's played edge rusher, and he can even move inside and play a little bit of defensive tackle if you need him to. And I think that's something Matt Patricia really likes about Jaball Sheard and a lot of other guys, is if you're versatile, if you can do a lot of different things, Matt Patricia wants you in his defense, because then Matt Patricia can run different things without taking you off the field. Jaball Sheard can play in every situation. He's played linebacker, he's played defensive end, he's played defensive tackle, he can stop the run, he can rush the passer, he can do pretty much everything for you. None of it is necessarily elite, but none of it is necessarily elite, but it's still better than what we have at the depth right now. And I think he could still have a huge impact with that versatility, moving around on the defensive line, even moving into the linebacking core a little bit if we need him to. And I think that versatility can, is something Matt Patricia loves, and it could be a big reason why we decide to bring him in to compete and maybe be a Detroit Lion in the 2020 season. Obviously, since he is a free agent still, he does have some cons, right? I mean, he's not perfect. If he was, he wouldn't be a free agent. But, you know, he's kind of older, which we've talked about some other veterans before that are a little bit older. If you give him a 1 or 2 year contract, like, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, if you pay them 1 year, then either it works or it doesn't, and they're off the book and you just move on. Like, you're not spending that money anyway. Like, you might as well give it to somebody that can be a rotational guy and help. And then even if he gets hurt and doesn't help, like, I mean, like, who cares? Like, it's 1 year and it's not a lot of money. He's not going to be asking for a lot of money. I think what I saw was like $6 million. The Detroit Lions have plenty of money left to do that. And even if Bob Quinn wants to save money for next year, if the salary cap does get cut, a 1 year contract is not going to affect that. So I see no reason why age should be a huge concern for them right now. And then the only other thing is he's not the best athlete. Like, he's just not. That's not his game. Like, he's a technician. Like, he's very smart, which I think he needs to be because he's not the greatest athlete. Like, he's not going to blow you away. He's not going to overpower you every single time, which is pure athleticism, and get around the corner and just destroy you like that. But, you know, he's found ways to work around it. He's found ways to, you know, still be effective without being necessarily the greatest athlete on the field. So I'm not super concerned about that either, because throughout his career, he's never been the greatest athlete, and he's still produced over time. So that's what I have for you guys today. What do you guys think? Do you think we should sign Jaball Sheard to a short-term contract this year to help bolster this defensive line, help bolster this pass rush, pairing with a guy like Trey Flowers and Danny Shelton and Deshaun Hand? And do you think it would help? Do you think we should sign him? And, you know, I just want to hear your guys' opinion on this, because, you know, this is kind of a guy that is questionable. Like, I think we should bring him in. I think he can be some very good depth for us, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you think we should bring in Jaball Sheard on a short-term contract to help bolster this offensive line for the 2020 season? Let me know that down in the comments down below. But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. If there is Lions before tomorrow, I'll obviously make a video letting every single person know. But until then, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see all of you in the video tomorrow. Bye, guys.